Details about the 3 new troops that are coming to the game on the 24th, that's just a couple days away from now, have been revealed. That includes the Ice Wizard, Jessie, and Dr. T. And in this video, we'll review the entirety of their kits, show you some of their gameplay, courtesy of the content creator Full Frontage, who has given me permission to react to his footage. Check him out, link down below. And as you know, I like to be extremely thorough in my evaluation, figuring out as much as we possibly can, so consider subscribing if that's the kind of thing you're into. Let's start with the Ice Wizard. The Ice Wizard does 110 DPS and 1,000 hit points. This is extremely low hit points and extremely low DPS. I was actually really shocked. When I talked with Full Frontage, he said that it is not splash damage from your basic attacks that you're dealing with your Ice Wizard, which means it's just super low DPS. Your comparison point here is a wizard who has the same amount of hit points, but does 120 DPS, and it is splash damage. Now, it is possible that when it's, we're able to really explore the Ice Wizard more, it is in fact splash damage, but let me review his kit and why it would make sense if it's not splash damage. And at the baby form, the Ice Wizard gives you a super freeze spell. This slows enemies for an even longer time window with a bigger blizzard. So I assume this means a bigger radius, and it looks like this lasts for about 5 seconds compared to the regular freeze spell's 3 seconds. At the 2-star tier, you throw an ice fan after 6 attacks. I think this is why the Ice Wizard is not actually doing splash damage, but I don't know, I would really like to test that a little bit more. 3-star freeze spell becomes super freeze spells. So pretty much every freeze spell you pick up now is boosted to a super freeze spell, if I'm understanding that correctly, which seems powerful in game modifiers where you're getting lots of freeze spells. And the Ice Fan charges much faster at 4 stars. I don't know exactly how much faster, but if it's like 50% faster, then that's where you're getting your AoE damage from your Ice Wizard, all right? Now, I think the Ice Wizard is really strong as a mid to late game pick to get a spell that could potentially win the game for you, or at least keep you alive if you deploy it well. This assumes you didn't already have a very powerful spell in pocket, and I sort of feel like the Ice Wizard is a pretty good one-of, but I don't know that I'm rushing him to go for fusions. In fact, I don't know, as long as I haven't deployed my spell, it's kind of weird. Like, spells you want to hold on to are really awesome and really bad. They're bad when you bump into lots of other spells you could have picked up and deployed. They're great when that's not the case and they're a difference maker for you. So this is actually a high skill unit. Whether or not you can deploy spells well makes a huge difference with this particular unit. That's not the case for other units like a tank, right? Like, very simple to understand how to use a tank, okay? Now, this is actually a really bad early game pick unless you're also able to draft a healer really quickly, because he's so low hit points, you're susceptible to getting ambushed, and you're gonna take sort of chip damage from the PvE stuff over time. If you're not recovering that health, you're actually gonna get really, really vulnerable over time. And because I don't know that this is a unit you're particularly interested in going for fusions on, I'm just not convinced necessarily that you want to rush them early. Remember that rare and epic units at the start that you cannot fuse are just dramatically increasing your squad cost for opening chests. And this causes much, much slower progression. You need to have some kind of combo to make that worth it. Like, you would take a Hog Rider if you knew your next pick was going to be a Greg, and you run around from tree to tree to tree, and we know that combo is really insane, and your harvest will offset the additional cost. Now, I think the Ice Wizard is not going to be as strong in games like Spell Overload or Loot Surge as the modifier, because there's already going to be a lot of really plentiful spells, so spells that you want to hold on to end up being kind of awkward when the whole map gets overflowed with spells, and your goal should be to pick up and throw as many as you can to get a bunch of turrets and furnaces down. You get the idea. Now, I do think that this is especially strong in a game mode like Ring Grab, where speed manipulation holds extra value. All you have to do is bust one enemy troop, and they drop a ring. That's a big deal. I also think it could be pretty cool in 1-coin chests. Since you'll be opening so many chests, it'll be easy to just grab a, Ice Wizard when you want that spell, and it's not too big of a commitment. I think that if you're looking to combo to make this troop more powerful, you're gonna really want to pick this in a draft set where you have a battle healer available to you to give you more hit points at the top end. I think a regular wizard for an extra spell slot is a really cool combo. That way you can still hold on to like a rage spell if you have one, and use your second spell slot to have that freeze spell. I mean, you are gonna wreck people, okay? You are gonna wreck people with that combo. And the Archer Queen makes your ranged attackers attack faster, which seems really awesome for the wizard because it means you can crank out more frequent AoE damage. Remember, he does AoE damage based on having hit a certain number of times, so attacking faster seems really good. This brings us to the Jessie. Jessie is probably the unit I am most hyped about in this 3-unit combo, and the reason is that she is a very powerful attacker, and she's got some really cool early game functionality. So she does 215 DPS and has 1,000 hit points. So remember, this is extremely low health, like your wizard or your dynamite. This is the same amount, by the way, as the ice wizard, and it is slightly more hit points than a bow or a bee, by not by much, okay? Now, the baby version of Jessie will build a turret after opening a chest. This is a lot like a Royale King, but instead of being a frontline defender, she's a glass cannon attacker. And according to Full Frontage, again, courtesy of him, I have this footage to show you, turrets do 49 damage per hit. I don't know how frequently they hit though. However, you can open a chest at the same location where you already have a turret, and unfortunately, it looks like it will replace your turret with a full health turret and give you a small amount of coins. There's pros and cons to this. The upside is actually having an engine for coins can be cool. The downside is that you can't quite build the turret army that you were hoping for, certainly not by staying at the exact same chest. Now at the 2-star tier, your shots bounce to a nearby target. This means that Jessie, you can think about her like 215 DPS, but it's actually more like double that if all your shots hit a nearby target. But that's not always going to be the case, and that's certainly not the case when you're battling large monsters like a boss. At the 3-star evolution, you're going to get a turret spell when you summon her. And I'm like, that's fine. The turret spell does not look like it gets destroyed potentially when you open a new chest. And at the 4-star tier, your turrets shoot much faster. Now, I don't think she'll have synergy in her ultra tier, okay, the 4-star tier, with things like cannons or expos. I think this is referring specifically just to the turret spell and the turrets that you deploy. So if this has synergy, by the way, with all, I don't know, deployable ranged attacking things, like the cannon and the expo would be amazing. I don't think that's the case. In fact, I think the queen does that, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, okay? Again, she is going to operate a lot like a Royale King, but with ranged DPS, which actually should keep her a bit safer, and I like that a lot. I find that the Royale King, because he doesn't have any way to like keep himself healthy, can get into trouble without a healer. But I feel like a Jessie, on the other hand, is a lot easier to just include, kind of like a Penny, right? You get her for the map, she's gonna sit in the back, hopefully she doesn't get ambushed, and as long as she doesn't get ambushed, you're chilling. Technically, Penny has 1,300 hit points and is even less ambushable than a Jessie. Keep that in mind. Now, it's a strong early to mid-game pick if you play aggressively. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you open up chests and you deploy a turret, but there's nothing nearby, what was the point? Just like a Royale King, I think it can definitely be worth the first draft pick, and especially because she's a rare instead of the epic Royale King. She's going to be easier to fuse, even though it's still pretty unlikely that that's going to happen early on. Now, giving you a turret spell is, of course, really cool, although keep in mind, this is really bad in game mods where you either have already drafted something that's got an awesome spell, or there are spells popping up all over the place, like we talked about earlier with Spell Overload or Loot Surge. I mean, the good news is that if you got the turret first, you can just throw it down, but if you're holding on to something like a Rage spell, really awkward. Like, you don't want to draft into a Jessie after you've already got a really cool spell in hand. There's a few troops that she'll have amazing synergy with. That includes the Battle Healer for additional hit points because she's very squishy. The Archer Queen for boosting ranged attack speed. I do think, by the way, that the Archer Queen will boost the speed of your expos and your cannons as well. So I'd probably boost the speed of turrets, which could be sick. I think the Wizard for the extra spell slot could be awesome. Just like how with the Ice Wizard, that way you can have a Super Freeze and something else and still like pick up other spells. Here it's going to be like the same case where you could be holding onto that Rage spell, but with your second spell slot, you could pick up the turret, continue to draft Jessies if you wanted to. And it is entirely possible that your best synergy for Jessie is Jessie, because if at her ultra tier, she's making her turrets shoot much faster, and that all stacks like how queen stacking works, you could turn up a pretty reasonable turret army, okay? But on the topic of armies, guess who's not making an army? It's Dr. T. Now, I'll explain that in just a second. The DPS on Dr. T is 125, and he has 2100 hit points. Your best comparison is a unit we've been talking about a lot, the Royale King. Why is that? His DPS is 115, and his hit points are 2200. He also operates the exact same way, where he's going to charge in like a madman, and so he's going to be your front line, like it or not, but for better or worse, he'll be on the front. At the baby tier, Dr. T is going to make it so that once you've gotten 10 coins, you will deploy or boost a mega crab if you already have one. And unfortunately, as I was talking about armies here, you can't make a crab army. You can only have one crab. It does look like, however, if your crab gets destroyed, you can potentially resummon it as soon as you get 10 more coins, which is pretty cool. And I don't know if there's an upper bound on the crab's scaling. Like, we'll talk about that more in just a second. Like, how much can you boost the mega crab, all right? If you get to 2 stars, it will increase your crab to Mark 2. 3 stars, Mark 3, 4 stars, Mark 4. This is scaling the crab's effectiveness, but I don't know in what way. I would assume hit points and DPS. Now, there is a little bit of weirdness here because this crab doesn't follow your squad around. It goes wherever the heck the crab wants. Crab does what crab wants, and it only attacks other players. The problem here is that, okay, you put this thing on the map and maybe it's relevant, but often it isn't. And so I'm left kind of wondering, is this actually a good unit to put in your squad? Because otherwise he's doing literally nothing for your squad, like your actual squad that you're in. It's summoning a crab, the crab runs around and annoys people maybe, but when it's destroyed, it explodes into a bunch of gold. I think it's more like 10 gold, maybe 15. I don't know if that scales with the Mark version of the crab or the boosts it's gotten from your having gotten coins, but you know, honestly, his kit leaves me with just a ton of questions about how the crabs work and how Dr. T works. Like, okay, so if you can have multiple Dr. Ts, can you summon multiple crabs? No. So is your crab stronger if you have more Dr. Ts, and in what way? Or are all your multiple Dr. Ts like a waste? Like, is a fusion Dr. T good or bad or a total waste? We know for queens and kings that those scale dramatically, boosting your attack speed. So how does this work with Dr. T? Okay. And unfortunately, although the idea of summoning a crab seems really cool, I'd rate him as very, very underwhelming. If your crab came with your squad and like followed your squad around, or was literally like a member of your squad and just, you know, moved like all your other squad members, we would have a completely different conversation here about the value of this unit. But at the epic tier, I don't know, man. This is not what I'm looking to draft, all right? Now, he has obvious synergy with suppliers that provide gold, like a goblin especially, but that's also true of Mavis and Greg. Although I think there really is more synergy with the goblin because your goal ultimately is to go attack enemy squads, rather than like the Mavis or Greg trader strategy where you're surviving and playing the outside. I mean, why summon a crab that's going to walk off on its own and not be strong enough to do anything? Really, you have to go with it if maybe you're going to benefit from the presence of the crab. So I don't think if you're playing the outside strategy that Dr. T is going to be particularly good no matter how much gold you're pulling down. And because he's a frontline troop with no healing capability, you're going to need to get either a medic, a Pam, or a battle healer to stay healthy. Or I suppose you've got off healers. I don't know what we call them. An off healer, right? Like an off tank, an off healer, a secondary healer. So for example, you'd have Mavis healing whenever you pluck carrots, Greg giving you hearts when you do trees, Trader is going to heal when you're given gems, right? Like, you're going to need a way to stay healthy. And you're probably also going to want to draft other frontline troops so that he's not the only one taking damage. So this includes things like a Barb, a Mortis, a Hog Rider, Nita, El Primo, or like a BK, right? And potentially, he will be stronger in game mods that are focused on PvP, like Angry Vines or the upcoming Gem Hotpots. And I genuinely don't hate a character that has a niche role in only certain game mods where you'd find him valuable. Like, I'm not totally opposed to it. So if he ends up being good in those game mods, that's going to be kind of cool. And I think he's less strong in game modes that are focused on PvE, things like the Mega Mole, Super Ice Spirits, or Golem Meteor, because people are already going to be ready to handle PvE content. This is just one more PvE thing. Unless they're getting totally overwhelmed, which is possible but unlikely, then maybe the crab makes a difference, but I don't feel like that's the case. So overall, if I were rating these units, I would say the one I'm most excited about is the Jessie, for just generally placing it into the squad early and often. The next one I think I'm interested in is obviously the Ice Wizard, but more as like a closer for that spell. Like, the baby form gives you Super Freeze. You shouldn't be drafting this unless you want the Super Freeze. And for what it's worth, I think that the entire enemy squad is slowed if any one unit in the squad is actively being slowed. But as soon as they leave the Super Freeze radius, then I think the whole squad is moving again. So accuracy here is going to matter a lot compared to the Dr. T. This is a 0 skill unit. There's no accuracy, okay? You just put him in your squad, get gold, Crab runs around, and Crab does what Crab wants. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. These all arrive in-game, I believe, on Monday, unless something changes, the 24th. I will stream this. I will probably max these units out. If that's possible to spend to do so, I assume it will be, but I don't know how that's going to work with refreshing the shop. I guess we'll see. So subscribe to find out.